Good evening. It is, what time is it? It's 7 o'clock, and we are now convening the City Council meeting for October 15th. And we will start with a roll call, and I'll call out by name. Councilmember McCormick,
Here.
Councilmember Andori,
Present.
Councilmember Candell,
Present.
Vice Mayor Kwok,
Present.
and I am here. We're all here, so welcome. And we will now move to the adoption of the agenda.
I'll move adoption of the agenda.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The agenda is officially adopted, and we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, as it is the first of the month, I am honored to read our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that Lafayette is part of the unceded ancestral homeland of the Bay Miwok people. The Bay Miwok and neighboring Ohlone people have lived in and moved through this place for thousands of years. They've stewarded and shaped this land for hundreds of generations. We express our appreciation and gratitude for this profound legacy, which enhances and contributes to our lives to this day. We will strive to honor this land and strengthen our ties with the indigenous communities that continue to live and work in our East Bay region as our neighbors and community members. We acknowledge and honor them and their ancestors, elders, and next 7 generations. And of course, yesterday we honored Indigenous Peoples Day. Okay, we'll move to public comments for items not on the agenda.
This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on items not on the agenda. And I believe Ms. Henry would like to speak. If you'll just come to the podium, I don't need your speaker slip at this moment. You'll have 3 minutes to speak.
But I'm sure you'll do your best to stick to it. Thanks, Libby.
I'm sure you'll be good at cutting me. Okay. Is this on? Okay. I'm sure I'm the last person that certain candidates for council want to hear from now. One has said he would not meet with me because he didn't believe it would be a civil discourse. I looked up civil discourse. The very first thing listed was to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. We have, as Americans, been subjected to, for over 9 years now, a transformation of the word truth to mean anything that fits into the certain political narrative, not based on facts or reality, and certainly having nothing to do with what your heart, your soul, and your conscience tells you is right or wrong. And here in this country, because a certain political party or certain political party leaders are exerting their control and power over the rest of us, there are women who have lost the right to health care access, the right to choose what to do with their own bodies. There are election workers, civil servants. There are now FEMA workers who are in fear of their lives because of the lies and the reality and the rhetoric of certain so-called political leaders in this country. It shouldn't happen. This is the United States of America. This is a democracy. Here in the blue state of California, people have acquiesced for the past 5 years, not noticing that the very same tactics of lying and bullying and name-calling and labeling and attacking anyone who does not jump on the YIMBY bandwagon has existed for 5 years now, and it's escalating. And it's escalating around the country now. Somehow, the state government, including the governor, including our attorney general, and including the leadership in the legislature, and HCD, and ABAG, and MTC, they all expect this blue state to acquiesce, even though they haven't been engaging in civil discourse for at least 5 years. The facts don't matter, just like Trump. 2.5 million housing goal is 1 million more than the Biden administration set for the entire country. Yet that's what our goal is in California because of Newsom. That is a needs requirement for achieving over 300,000 a year for 8 years. Is that my hint?
Yes, that is your
Okay.
cue. Your 3 minutes are up.
Okay.
Just
The
what,
facts should matter.
Libby, your
Can I
time
just
is
say
up. Do you have
this?
a last statement? Okay.
Okay. The facts should matter to the people in power in Sacramento, and the facts should matter to anyone who wishes to be a council member, because we need leadership that will take the truth to heart and fight back against the tyranny that is unfortunately our state government now.
Thank you.
There are no additional speakers in the community hall, but we do have one attendee virtually. PL, go ahead. You may unmute yourself. We've allowed you to speak. If you would unmute yourself, we can hear you.
Are these technical difficulties or? Okay.
Yeah, I'm afraid we're going to have to pass on hearing from you if you do not allow yourself to speak.
Yes, and if you can hear us, we welcome your comments. You can write City Council.
Yes, write to City Hall at lovelafayette.org.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 8, the City Manager's Update.
Thank you and good evening, City Council members and members in the audience. Updates from a couple of departments. First, from Public Art, a reminder that this Saturday, October 19th, is the day at the library, and the Public Art Committee will be hosting a guided tour of all the art in our library, and it'll be led by Janice Peacock, who is a member of the Public Art Committee. And there are over 30 diverse pieces of art ranging from large installations to smaller, more intricate works. The tour, which is free, begins at 1 p.m. and will last about 45 minutes. And you can get more information from the city's website. The Parks, Trails, and Recreation Department's Youth Commission is gearing up for the annual Haunted House that will once again be held outside in the community park the weekend of October the 26th and the 27th. And tickets will likely sell out, so get yours from the city's website soon. And I wanted to provide the council and the community with an update on the Lennar project, also known as the Brant. This is the 66 condominiums located at Mountain View Drive and Mount Diablo Boulevard. It's been in construction for several years now. We have recently learned that all the windows in the project will have to be replaced because they are defective. and it will take approximately 6 months, 6 additional months to complete. And Lennar will continue to do the other work on site, but the development will not be occupied for at least 6 months. City staff met with Lennar last week. We would like to get the public improvements done and ready before the rains begin to the best extent possible. And so the traffic signal in front of the city offices in Lennar, that's been installed and it should be energized this Thursday. Additionally, the street lights in front of Lennar are also working. So we're working with the developer to finish up all the work on site. However, the project itself will not be completed until the spring of 2025. I'd be happy to answer questions.
Any questions, Councilman Rendry?
Yep. Did they have a suggestion as to whether we should wait to install the public art until they're finished replacing the windows, or how will that proceed?
We raised the issue, and they would like to finish the installation because there's going to be heavy equipment and cranes to lift the windows up. But they are also aware of the fact that we'd like to see the public art, so it may be staged. They're doing one building at a time, so they may be able to install the art when that building has been completed, but we're still waiting to hear.
Any other questions? Okay. Any public comment?
No public comment. Would you, next time, would you fill out a speaker slip? You can announce yourself at the, go ahead, at the podium.
Hi, everyone. My name is Roger Deming. I'm just curious what the defect was and who's going to be covering the cost, presumably, of the increase for the replacements.
Yes, please, thank you.
It's a matter between Lennar and their contractor, and so it's something, I don't know who's going to bear the cost, but it will not be the city.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. Okay, if there are no other public comments, and we can move to presentations, and I welcome Assistant Fire Chief Chris Bachman from Contra Costa Fire.
Good evening, City Council, City staff, attendees here in chambers, and those residents also attending online. My name is Chris Bachman. I'm one of the Assistant Chiefs, Contra Costa County Fire. I'm here to give a presentation on behalf of our Fire Chief, Louis Brochard, and all the members of Contra Costa County Fire to provide you a review and update of our services that we provide to the City of Lafayette. We want to remind you that although we're a county department, we are your fire department at a glance. We do countywide fire rescue, EMS, and ambulance service. We're one of the largest special districts in California, and we are dedicated to preservation of residents' life and property. You'll see up on the map the location of our 34 stations that we have throughout the county, and the resources on this next slide that are each one of them. So about our district, it says crews and facilities. We have over 500 employees. We have 33 fire stations. You did hear me mention that when I say our 34 stations, because we do also identify, although not a fire station, where our hand crew is located at the Byron Fire Center. We identify that as a station as well, although not a fire station. With 36 different crews, we have a fleet of over 250 specialized vehicles, including specialty programs and an expanded service area. On the right, you'll see where it says our special service that we provide our residents is ambulance transport, aviation, crew 12, which is our hand crew, a fire dozer, which we have 2 of, a fire investigation unit, a hazmat team, health and wellness, K9, which is both search and rescue and arson detection, 2 different dogs, marine, rescue, UAS or UAV drones, and FEMA urban search and rescue team. So what's new? The Byron Wildfire Center, which I mentioned, is where we're currently staffing our Crew 12 right now. This is a county-wide hand crew that does year-round resource. They're available for statewide deployments. The picture up on the screen is a deployment when they were on the Point Fire. And what else is new to our program this year that's up on the screen is a new helicopter, Copter 3RC. It's based out of the Byron Wildfire Center that I previously mentioned as well. We had a media event about this helicopter just over a week ago. We're doing a pilot with PG&E and identifying what a valuable resource this helicopter is to decide. It'll be staffed at least through the end of this month into the beginning of November until we start downgrading our wildland response. We also have a residence wildfire mitigation project program, which I'll discuss in detail shortly. We have construction plans for 3 new fire stations that are underway. A SAFER grant, which has added additional resources for Battalion 8 and 9 crews that occurred in 2023. And we organized a DEI program that has now been implemented department-wide. So for calls of service, this is just in 1 month. For September of 2024, in all of our cities, Contra Costa County Fire responded to 7,535 calls. You'll see the breakdown provided on the screen of what those calls consisted of. And from vegetation fires to structure fires, rescue, EMS calls. When we break that down by city, this is total calls for September of 2024 that we responded to in just the city of Lafayette, which is a total of 206, and a list of what those calls are. I always get a request of, well, what does other mean? Sometimes it's just broke down in other because the type of call is too small. But a lot of times the exterior fires are also thrown in that other category because there's different types of exterior fires. Is it rubbish? Is it trash? What is it? But I'll also go over that number. So Lafayette year to date is sitting at 22 total exterior fires for the year from January to September. This is kind of right on path of where you normally are. I look back, last year you were at 19, and the year before that we were at 30. You average around 30 to 35 total exterior fires a year, so we're not above average. We're kind of right on path for normal. Next, we get into ambulance-only EMS calls. Countywide, we for just the month of September, we were at 1,163, and this breaks out what types of calls those were. The bottom chart also gives a good 4-month average to kind of show what our trend is doing. And if we move into the city of Lafayette, we'll see that we only had 14 ambulance-only calls for the month of September in the city of Lafayette. And that is actually trended downward if you look previously at the types and numbers of EMS calls, EMS ambulance-only calls that we have ran in this in the Lafayette area and unincorporated. One thing that didn't make the list, but I thought it was worth mentioning, because we usually only have about 1 structure fire a year in Lafayette, and we had one. It didn't make the report, but we did have it on October 8th. It was a 2-alarm residential fire on Monroe Avenue. It was extinguished and brought under control in about 45 minutes. It involved 8 engines, 2 ladder trucks, 1 rescue, 3 battalion chiefs, a safety officer, a fire investigator, and a district chief. Second Home did sustain some damage from this. No injuries were reported, and we were able to confirm that the cause of the fire was from a barbecue, hot embers from a grill from doing a barbecue earlier that evening. Although it did come in at roughly 5 a.m., we were able to obtain footage that the smoldering had occurred mostly through the night, and then it finally took off and ignited just before 5 a.m. But we're very fortunate that no injuries were reported and that we were able to keep that to the structure that it started, and then with damage to the one next to it. If you look at the size of the flames and the amount of fire we had when we first pulled up, and the dense vegetation that was around the structures, we're lucky that it didn't expand further. But really give a shout out to our initial engine companies that showed up on scene and took immediate attack on this 2-alarm fire that we had. So the wildfire threat, as we're seeing, our season is usually going longer, it's less predictable, and the fire weather trend continues. And although we're expecting rain on Wednesday, it's going to be followed up with red flag warnings starting on Thursday and going through Saturday, which we're evaluating as that gets closer for consideration of additional staffing and making sure that we have resources pre-positioned. But that'll be a countywide effort if that's implemented. Indicators point to a dangerous fire season. There's no area in the county that is risk-free. We just want to identify that although we have the maps that are out there for the very high fire hazard and high fire hazard severity zones, what's currently not included on those maps is the local responsibility area, or the LRA. So these maps are just identifying the updates that have been done by the state for the state responsibility area. So you have this huge portion around Lafayette that's showing there's no rating. We know that those updated maps are coming, and we were recently told that we should expect those in January. So they're coming very soon, and we'll be holding public meetings and very forthcoming to all the residents in the county of new impacted areas and what those local responsibility area maps indicate. But we want to identify whether you're in that marked area or a high threat zone or not. No area in the county is risk-free. And we're seeing this based on the 2,000 calls that we run annually, that it's not just in those very high or high areas. It's occurring throughout the entire county, our fires. So one thing we need to make sure we're doing is that we have our resources available to residents, and that you're aware of the wildfire mitigation projects that are being completed, the residents' guides, and all the information to help make sure you're properly prepared, both your home and for evacuation. I have thumb drives in the back of the room that has all the information about home hardening, evacuation planning, preparedness, and all the programs. All this information is also available on our website for our online attendees, but for anybody that's here in Chambers, please make sure you grab a thumb drive to access all these electronic documents. So the Contra Costa County Wildfire Mitigation Program, I'll give you an overview for Lafayette. So countywide, we did 103 projects we completed last year. This program is funded through approximately $2 million in Measure X funding that focuses on a hired contractor and a consultant to make sure we're complying with all our CEQA requirements with the state, along with the $2.7 million that's needed to fund Crew 12 now year-round to do mitigation work as well. So of those 103 projects that were completed last year, 6 of those were community chipping days in Lafayette, 6 were evacuation route cleanups, 1 was a Firewise strategic plan project, 1 vegetation management project, and 1 dead tree removal. You can also see on the chart of comparison with the applications that are submitted to Lafayette with the types of projects that are submitted compared to our other cities throughout the county. I'd like to really give a shout out and a thank you to some of the departments within Lafayette that helped us, especially with the evacuation route cleanup, and that would be the Lafayette Police Department. They helped by identifying evacuation routes that they felt really needed addressed for a safer evacuation route in the need it needed to be implemented. Reminder, the fire department deals with the fire, and your local police department and sheriff's department deals with the evacuation if it's necessary. So we feel it's very important that our local law enforcement officers help us in identifying the evacuation routes that they think that they would be using in the event it was needed, and that we address those through this program. So we were able to complete 6 of those last year that were identified by your police department. Additional signage was provided by Public Works several days before on these busy roads that kind of gave the residents a heads up of what to expect, and it could cause delays in their commute or traveling down this road, and to watch out for the mitigation crew that was out doing that work. Along with, they provided cones, vehicles, and personnel to assist with traffic control. So again, thank you to both Public Works and the Lafayette Police Department for partnering with us as we were very successful in evacuation route cleanup this year in Lafayette. So the changing of wildfire threat zones, as I mentioned, these maps are going to be updated, but when you look at where Lafayette sits, there's a threat to the north, the west, and the south, with vegetation, exterior fires providing a significant threat to the city. These maps can be located on our website at Contra Costa County fire.cc.wildfire threat, or you can scan the QR code. It's also available on the thumb drive in the back of the room. So for the safety of our residents, we're wanting to make sure everybody has reviewed the information that we're providing, that outside of wildfires, we also need to make sure that we're evaluating safety within the home. Residential fires continue to provide risk to our communities. Our modern homes are burning faster and hotter. They're producing more toxic smoke based on the contents that are inside the homes. So the simple steps that we can make sure that we're protecting our residents and our loved ones inside are making sure that we have working smoke detectors on all floors and in every home, that there's working carbon monoxide alarms if you have gas inside the structure, such as natural gas, and making sure that we sleep with our bedroom doors closed and have a family evacuation plan, and to make sure you practice it. More information is available on our website about these safety tips. There's an evacuation tool we need to make sure that everyone's aware of, to make sure you know your zone. Genesis is the countywide evacuation tool that we use, formerly known as Zone Haven. Same platform with the same concept of making sure you know your zone. The important thing to make sure you understand, though, is Zone Haven is the public-facing live tool that shows everyone what's the status of your current zone. The actual notification comes out via CWS alerts. So not only do you need to make sure you know your zone through Genesis, but that you've also signed up to receive those alerts through the community warning system. It's used by all fire and law enforcement for evacuation scenarios such as wildfire, flood, natural disasters, etc. It's very easy to use. It's app-based. We're able to use it on phone, tablets, and computers, and residents can learn more at cwsalerts.com to make sure you know your zone for not only your home, but your school if you have children in schools, and also where you work, because this is how you're going to be receiving notifications if you sign up for this. The nice thing, not only is available by phone and tablet out in the field for residents, but it's also available to the public safety personnel. We've implemented evacuation warnings and evacuation orders in the field by tablets, and it's very beneficial when we're at the unified command post with law enforcement and identify if we need to do an evacuation. We used to pull out a map and start talking about this road to this road, where now we just select the zone, we push a button, we send the alert, CWS and confirms it and sends a warning. So we're really taking advantage of this technology to improve the timeliness and how fast these alerts go out if they're necessary. And the QR code provides the references for all the material that's been provided, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Questions from council? Councilmember Ndore.
Well, first, I'd like to thank you and the entire team for the very quick response on Monroe and averting, what could have been a much worse situation. So thank you for that. I have a couple of questions about the helicopter. This is exciting news that you've, the Board of Supervisors authorized that, and you've got the helicopter now. Could you say a little bit more about the cooperation with PG&E and how that works?
So we have a agreement with them that they're going to provide the helicopter and the pilot. We are now going to, initially that was it, and then we've recently reevaluated and now added a Confire firefighter that's now also going to be in the helicopter as well to improve radio communication, both the dispatch and the incident command on the ground. And the helicopter has 300 gallons water drop capabilities. It's out in, it's stationed out in Byron, and it's only available during daylight hours. It has already responded to, I believe, 4 or 5, I think 5 incidents and water dropped on 4, and has been very effective on the incidents it's responded to, and been a very valuable resource.
The incidents it's responded to, have they been forest, grassland, or buildings?
Mostly grassland.
Okay, thank you.
Just to follow up on that, what does the pilot entail in terms of how long this relationship might be, or, for the helitanker to stay?
So it's contracted to stay until we start downsizing our resources going into the winter months. So we're anticipating beginning of November, middle of November, depending on what the weather does. But we won't downgrade that resource until we're downgrading everything. When we're downgrading our bulldozer, the hand crew, all of our wildland units is when we'll downgrade that resource. And that's all weather dependent.
Is it a program that might be ongoing, like next year, or is that what's under assessment?
Yeah, that's what we're doing, is we're
Okay.
evaluating about a month and a half, maybe 2 months, depending on how long the season goes, the effectiveness of it, and then having conversations in the off season with PG&E about if we want to explore this option going into next year as well, during our kind of extreme heat and when we see our risk being the highest.
I know that in Southern California Edison did fund a helitanker down there. So I'd be curious if that's kind of like any parallels can be, kind of brought up to see if they can put that money on a sustainable basis to that program. That would be great.
Great. Thank you very much for the presentation. We certainly hope you have a very boring weekend that's coming up. So let's hope all your preparation is not tested. A couple of questions. You mentioned that there's 3 new fire stations being constructed in the jurisdiction. Are there, if I understood the...
Yes, they're out in the Battalion 8 and 9 area.
Okay, so they're not...
It was part of, so in the initial implementation of the Measure X dollars to open either closed or additional fire stations, one of the first stations that was open that benefited Lafayette was Station 4 in Walnut Creek. And it's kind of like when you see the response from that 2-alarm fire. We don't have that many engines and ladders or even chief officers in Lafayette. But as an organization, when we have a a working fire and it goes to a first alarm or second alarm, those resources are immediate that are dispatched and show up and have that effectiveness of knocking the fire down quickly. So although they're not, we'll say, staffed or stationed in Lafayette, that's the benefit we feel of being protected by Contra Costa County Fire, is the amount of resources we have department-wide, if necessary, in a major event.
Very good. Okay, yes, thank you. The other one, I'm just kind of curious, when we looked at the 3-year trends overall for your service and the number of incident calls, it looks fairly flat. The ambulance calls, which you called out, were trending pretty significantly downward, both throughout the entire area you serve, plus Lafayette. Is there any reason for that, why ambulance calls are down so much over the last 3 years?
I'm not sure on the EMS. That's really not my area of expertise. I really, on a monthly basis, I'm always monitoring and overseeing the exterior fires and structure fires. But I do think that even when you look at, from a department-wide or a county-wide standpoint of our entire jurisdiction, it's not trending down near as fast as it is, or what it has, what September showed in Lafayette. And sometimes it's just a trend that it does a dip and the overall year-end number is still roughly the same. So you got to be careful when you just look at a snapshot of 1 month. But that's why we wanted to provide both entire district and what the 1 month was for both Lafayette and the county. But I think the best comparison would be at the end of the year to say, how did both the county or our entire jurisdiction, what were those numbers, and what was the city of Lafayette compared to last year's entire numbers. And if that's something you're interested in, we can absolutely provide you that in January to show you what that trend was for the entire year compared to 2023.
All right, great. Thank you. And thank you very much for your service.
Thank you, and thank you for the report. We appreciate everything you are doing, and yeah, good luck this weekend. All the announcements we've been seeing about the high wind is frightening for a lot of people. So a couple of questions. It looked like Lafayette didn't have as many projects as like some of our neighboring cities from that graph. And you said that the police helped, request one, especially for the evacuation routes, which was amazing, and fully support that. How do we get more projects done in our city?
So the bar chart you were looking at were the total projects. That was both applied and completed. So your numbers are right on track with about any other city as far as how many has been completed. You don't have as many applied as what you saw. That spike on the chart is both Moraga, Orinda, and Richmond are the 3 highest for applied, but they are not necessarily the highest in completed. We make sure that we're very consistent and fair in how we're evaluating and completing, that we're not putting too much emphasis on one community, and we're trying to spread those county sales tax dollars across every jurisdiction equally and fairly. So some cities do have a higher number of applications,
Okay.
but that doesn't mean that they're going to get a higher number of projects completed. It actually makes it harder on the local fire marshal or whoever is assigned to grade those projects, because now you have to kind of rank them.
Right.
And identify what's the most critical projects to do first, because although we completed 103 projects countywide, there were still, I think, 88 projects in the queue as of July 1 to do more projects that were waiting to be funded. This helped us with a one-time allotment that our fire board or the board of supervisors then approved, an extra $1 million in wildfire mitigation funding for this year, 24-25. to try and get those numbers down of all those pending projects, knowing that they were very pleased with the 100 we completed, but we're hoping to complete more like 150 to 160 this next year, since we have another $1 million to complete the projects that are in the system.
Okay, so sorry, I still have a few more questions. On that list, in Lafayette, you had one dead tree. And I'm wondering why, 'cause it's not normal to hear that the fire department takes a tree out. And so what are the circumstances that you use to determine that a tree actually gets removed?
So when we're going through to do a project, if there is a tree that's dead and we're doing like a fuel reduction or we're doing an evacuation or cleanup, and there's a dead tree in the area we're treating, we do cut it down.
Okay,
But we track it. So we track every dead tree that we cut down in the county, but it's not necessarily a project. There is an application that says we need dead tree removals, and that's usually more along the lines of there's a row of dead trees and maybe it's on an evacuation route, or there's a concern about several dead trees on the evacuation route, and could they fall over and block this major evacuation route that could be utilized? Or it could be a fuel break that's being created and there's a dead tree on it, so we're going to remove it. But the reason we track all those dead trees is we track the size, the type, the exact GPS location, and then we're sharing that with the county, who's then applying for grant funding to try and replace those trees, because there's a formula based on the size of tree, the type of tree, to help reduce the greenhouse emissions that trees provide this valuable resource for. There's a formula based on the type of tree and size of tree that you removed, what would it need to be replanted? The only thing we've asked is, as we're sharing that information, please don't go back and try and plant it in the same location that we've shared, because there's probably a reason that it has died.
right.
But, so we feel that we're collaborating well with the county to try and replace those trees that are being cut down. And they're going to be very strategic in specific areas that they're going to be replanted in, if they receive the funding to do that.
Thank you, great explanation. Know a lot more about your process now. Okay, at least one more. It's election season, and there is a climate bond on the ballot. And one of the key items is for wildfire. And do you have any idea of what impacts Confire may feel if we pass that bond? And if Confire has taken a position on that ballot measure too, if you could share that.
We haven't taken a position on it, and honestly, I'm not even familiar with it, so I know we're not making a statement towards it.
Not a problem. Just thought I'd ask. Then one last one, and it was with Councilmember Anduri and I met with Don Walklett and all of his talks with Muon Space about FireSat and the opportunities that could really be, like Carl explained last week, was fast detection. We've got this helicopter fast response would be an ideal collaboration. Are you familiar with that work that is being done, or who in the department is familiar with that?
So I believe what you're referring to is over in Berkeley, Oakland.
No, there's a Berkeley, Oakland, and then there's also a Mountain View, right? Muon Space is the one that is getting all the funding.
Yes.
And has satellites up there now.
So I know before we would want to move forward with that, the locations have been picked, are identified as pilots, and they're experimenting with, identifying, is that resource proving to be more timely in identifying when the fire comes in. I know in the meantime, our dispatchers do have access to the wildfire cameras that are throughout the county, and that whenever we get.
To the ones on the satellite? No,
No, not the ones.
just the ones that we've put in. I know the other ones. Okay, thank you.
To identify that if there's a call, I know the dispatchers are always going to the cameras to identify size, how big a column of smoke is it, confirmed it is a working fire, to start getting those additional resources en route. I think just like kind of our helicopter pilot, we all share success stories when we pilot a new program. And that's the great thing about the fire service in California, is that we're all trying to be innovative in different ways and share that information of our success stories and what worked well and what didn't. So we can all learn from each other and implement those necessary new technologies if they've proven beneficial.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for being here. You're a very popular presenter. I have two questions for you. Number one, I noticed and was appreciative to see that you mentioned a DEI initiative or program as part of one of your accomplishments this year. I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit more about what the goals of the program are, any achievements that you've seen so far, and the objectives.
So we wanted to make sure that we trained all of our 500 plus personnel with DEI training, along with coming up with a DEI statement that properly represents our organization after that training. So to develop that statement, we not only took our leadership, but we made sure that it accurately represented our entire department. So we selected, based on interest and request, representatives from every different, we'll say, group in our department, not just firefighters. So staff that work at our headquarters, the finance, HR, the shop, all personnel from our entire organization, to work with the consultant that we hired to make sure that we came up with an appropriate DEI statement that properly represents our organization and our mission moving forward. And we're very proud that as we're getting ready to finalize our statement, that it truly was developed from our members of our organization, not just our leadership.
Thank you. And I'd be interested to review any of the deliverables that are publicly facing. Again, I applaud you to continue on that effort, and hope you'll, and I'd like to be kept abreast.
Okay.
A second question, which you've brought to us in the past years, is the need for a ladder truck in our city and potentially a new location for the fire station. Is there any update with regard to that topic in terms of progress made or needs in the years ahead, timing of this?
We have identified that our station will not properly support or house a ladder truck. Just the size of the station and the apparatus approach or bay won't support that. We are identifying to every developer that this is going to be a future need, and whenever there's an issue with access or ladder access to any of these sites, we've been requiring additional safety features on the building, especially when it gets over 4 or 5 stories, of requiring an additional stairwell on the backside of the building that goes up to the roof, so that we have another means off the roof if necessary. The fire code only requires that you have access to one side of the building with a ladder truck. And what we're seeing is some of these buildings meet the intent of the code of it's a real narrow front and a long, deep access, that we only have access to that real narrow portion of the front of the building. So how we're addressing that we don't have access to those other 3 sides is requiring that rated stairwell with a standpipe into the backside of the building. So as we would ladder the front of the building, if we had to get off immediately, then we have that secondary way off that building via a rated stairwell. And that rated stairwell also serves as a grade evacuation tool for the residents in the building as well. So it is on our radar. We are identifying it in plan reviews, but we can't require any one project or any one development to solve this problem. But we're definitely monitoring it as we continue to get those dense projects submitted in downtown Lafayette.
Okay, but it doesn't sound like you're looking for a new site that could accommodate a ladder truck?
We haven't been able to locate an ideal site. We have made the statement that we're open to any type of site to build one and doing and selling our location where we're at, but it's got to make sense. We can't get too far off the downtown, the corridor, because we do constantly monitor, and we have a program that identifies, well, what if you were to put a fire station here? How would that impact the number of calls that you respond to, even outside of downtown area? And as you move it several blocks, you see other areas get a worse response time and some areas improve. So you got to be careful as you're evaluating sites, and there's just really not many sites that will accommodate the size of plot that we would need to house a ladder truck or a tiller truck.
Okay, thank you for the update.
Can I have a quick follow-up on that?
Yes, please.
Sorry. So I just want to make sure, because we are going to get taller buildings downtown if you're following the housing situation, there's going to be taller. So I guess I'm trying to understand, you said you're open to another site, or you're aggressively, is this a direction? Or is it something if somebody were to propose something, you guys would be open to it? I'm kind of curious what the attitude is, what the kind of the approach is.
We are not actively looking right now, but we are definitely open to it. Because as we mentioned, we're getting ready to break ground and start 2 different fire stations out east. Once those get underway, it would probably be more an ideal time to start then the planning and research and looking for an additional site or a new site if we were to build a station in Lafayette. I know that the site we had planned out in Brentwood, because of environmental issues with the site, we had to relocate and find another site. So that kind of set us back a little bit and had to kind of focus efforts on getting another location, since it was already tied to some grant funding and Measure X funding to staff that additional station. So that's where a lot of effort has went in the last 2 years.
Okay, that's right. I think when it does become a project, I think obviously we'd love to be involved, because it's going to be an issue, right? We can foresee it coming. So I think as soon as you can get under your current stations you're working on, we should probably work on that together.
Yeah, I'll make sure I pass that on to our support services division, who does all the fire station construction and evaluation of all the sites and apparatus and purchases.
Thank you.
I have another question. It was about 5 years ago that we had the fire in Lafayette, and it was red flag days, similar to what's coming up. And it was PSPS, so the power was out, but one route was unfortunately open for PG&E, and that happened to be the one that sparked the fire. My question is, PG&E, well, first off, we've really amped up our safety element. We're really looking at our community partners and stakeholders to kind of work together on doing some proactive communications, making sure their infrastructure is compliant and they're keeping track of all that. But I have a question about East Bay Parks. We are in CPUC Tier 2 and Tier 3 fire zone, which means elevated to extreme risk, just by the nature of PG&E infrastructure being where it is. Particularly in Briones, I think is a Tier 3, the park here. So what is the relationship between East Bay Parks fire and Con fire? Or, just to get some background on that.
No, I feel we have a good working relationship. I know that an area of the Lafayette Walnut Creek Shaded Fuel Break does go across park dirt or park ground in 2 different spaces, and we're working with them to finish up. Those are some of the last 2 sections, or actually we have 4 sections that aren't complete yet, so we're about 90% complete with that project. 2 of those areas are on East Bay Park ground. It will get done, it's just the additional documentation and approval and permits that we got to get to go through the park approval process that still needs done. So we have a very positive working relationship with them, and I know they've received millions of dollars in grants these last several years and have done a lot of mitigation work, both in Contra Costa County and the neighboring counties.
That's great. City Manager Srivatsa and I will be meeting with East Bay Parks, and talk about their vision, and definitely for us, we obviously, since Lafayette backs up our neighborhoods to Briones, it's really important we understand that. So it's good to hear, and I'm glad, and want to thank you again for all that work on the shaded fuel break there, as well as Lafayette Rossmore fuel break. These are important defense mechanisms, and we really appreciate the work and the effort on that, as well as all the work you've been doing throughout the year. We had the evacuation routes, as you said, and there was a town hall right after that where Chief Burchard and yourself and many representatives for your team were out. So we really appreciate the education that you're providing, as well as the proactive work. And again, as Councilmember Ndori pointed out, the response time. Not only just recently, but we are still very thankful for that quick response time 5 years ago. That was a big deal. So thank you again for being here. And I will ask for any public comments.
The mayor is taking public comments on item 9A, and we have one speaker slip for persons in the community hall, Stella Witherspoon. And if you're in our virtual audience and would like to speak, you can raise your virtual hand now.
Hi, good evening. Thank you very much for the presentation. I really appreciate it, and thank you for your service, and also thank you to the rest of the staff at Confire for service. I'm really interested in the local responsibility area maps process, and I would like to know if you can tell us a little bit more about how the maps will be developed and what the public input process will be, and then how will it be adopted locally. Thank you.
So if you followed the process for when the SRA maps came out, it'll follow that same format. The maps aren't really up for, we'll say, major change. There's got to be, science and a lot of data behind if we're going to request to move a line, unless we're moving that line to maybe include an area that was just kind of carved out that it should have included. I believe the comment period is usually about 60 days after the maps are released. And we were just told within the last week that we should expect those maps to be released. Their goal is to release them in January, which would give them about another 60 days for public comment. And especially any area that has, or any city that has a reasonable change in the map, where maybe you have more areas that now are being identified as high or very high, we'll be holding public meetings to list those concerns, and they'll all be documented and then sent to the state for comment. And then there'll be a time frame that then the cities and the county are supposed to then adopt the maps after the public comment period. So it'll really follow the same format as what the SRA maps did when they were updated, with the exception of local government then adopting the maps. And that time frame will be identified as well when the maps come out after public comment, once they become finalized, when the expectation is that both county and cities would adopt them.
Thank you for that. Before you go, Chief Bachman, when we first started, we were talking, and I would love to give you the opportunity to kind of comment on the public comment about the California Insurance Commission's fire program. If you can just kind of give us a little background and Confire's hope that maybe that can be done a little differently. I mean,
Yeah, let me pull up the, because I want to make sure I get the name correct.
yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, apologies. While you're pulling that up, I'll ask for more, thank you, Susan, for more public comment.
We have no additional speakers, Mayor, at this time.
I appreciate you checking. Thank you very much. Yeah, just a little background. The Insurance Commissioner's Office did come and had a representation here virtually at a meeting because we were asking about programs. Obviously, it's a big concern of the community. The insurance issues people are having being dropped or money's going, rates going very high. And the Insurance Commission does have an avenue to programs that communities and residents can get involved with, and also grants. But you gave us some interesting information at the beginning of this meeting before it started, so I'd love for you to share those comments.
So the California Department of Insurance is going to require additional mandates that insurance companies have to give discounts if certain thresholds are met or certain criteria are met. One of those is if you're a Firewise community, then insurance companies would be required to give some sort of discount to a resident if you're in a Firewise community and you provide the certificate. Another item that they provided on the list is if you're on the 2024 Fire Risk Reduction Community List. So there's only about, I think, 20 total cities, counties, and districts, special districts on that list. I've spoken at public comment. I've provided comments via email during their public comment period, and I've also responded to the Board of Forestry survey that I support this program, but am requesting that they reconsider opening the application period. So the application period for this was from January to April, but it was originally explained in the workshop. We had members attend the workshop. It was described to us that if you're on this list, you would be a higher priority for grant funding, and the target was going to be low-income portions of a community. In fact, there was even low-income requirements in that threshold to qualify. We evaluated it and felt that we weren't going to be applying for grants and it wouldn't impact us, so we're not on the list. And then when it came out that they're going to use this list as a reduction for insurance, we support that if they're going to reopen the application period, because when we went to then seek and say, how can we now apply to get on this list if this is going to be considered, we're told that the application period is closed until April of 2026. So that has been my comment to them, that we support their direction with this, but they need to reconsider and open the application period up, because we would for sure qualify to get on that list for Contra Costa County Fire, but didn't apply because how it was explained in the workshops was it was going to benefit communities if you were applying for grants for low-income residents.
Thank you for that, and thank you for your public comment to the commission. I think that's something we might want to be following up as well in terms of supporting that. Because my impression after the meeting with the insurance commissioner's representative was that, okay, we missed this year, we can apply next year. But it sounds like regardless from what you're saying, we really need to have them expand the nature of the application or applicants' ability to
And I'm hopeful that the Board of Forestry survey that they sent out, I'm not sure how wide that survey went, but we did respond to that survey and explained our concerns and support for the program, but the concerns that if this is going to have a major impact on allowing residents to apply for discounts for insurance, then it really needs to be reopened and not closed for the next 2 years, because that's not how it was described in the workshop when the training was provided and application period was open in April of this year.
Thank you. Thank you for explaining that and for sharing that tonight. With that, thank you again for everything, you and the department. We're very grateful, and thank you for your time tonight.
Okay, thank you for having me.
Okay, have a good night, and we will move to the next item, which is Patrick Goulier with the the update on safety around schools. Looking forward to that.
Patrick, could you help him connect, please?
We are in business. Good evening, Mayor and Council. We are excited to be here tonight to acknowledge and celebrate the substantial completion of the Safety Improvements Around Schools project, as well as recognize the other efforts that have been taken to improve safety on the streets around our city's schools. The purpose of tonight's presentation is severalfold: to provide a review of the work that's been done as part of this effort, to illustrate the scope and the scale of the work, to show you some beauty shots of the work that's been completed on our streets, and to celebrate this achievement while recognizing the many people that have contributed towards this huge effort. Sitting with me tonight are Bart Carr and Stella Witherspoon, Chair and Vice Chair of the Transportation and Circulation Commission. And I've asked them to join me tonight in recognition of the significant efforts of the Transportation Commission in prioritizing this work and helping to bring the project to fruition. So as a reminder, going back a few years, this effort started in 2021 during the pandemic, when city staff, elected officials, and some of the TransCirc commissioners led efforts with an engineering consulting team to engage the school communities on actual and perceived safety issues around each of Lafayette's public and private schools. Site visits and walkabouts were held at each school by the task forces that were set up as part of this effort, and those groups included members of the community as well as the various school communities. And that work led to the development of these 6 rapid implementation safety plans for each of the city's schools. And these plans identify the reported safety issues as well as lists of short, medium, and long-term projects intended to address those safety issues. And subsequent to that work, TransCirc identified a subset of projects that represented the highest priority work for the engineering department to tackle. City Council then allocated about $1.3 million in funding towards the effort. And since that time, Mike Moran, who's with us as well, and others from the engineering department have worked hard to design and construct the priority projects that have been listed in tonight's staff report. So tonight we want to acknowledge that the vast majority of projects have been constructed in time for the start of the school year. And the remainder of this presentation is meant to review and show off this work to you all. So first, while the staff report provides the complete list of improvements, the next series of slides will show you the scale of some of the more major capital projects that have been implemented. We designed and installed 6 rapid flashing beacon crossings, 2 raised crosswalks, 10 high visibility crosswalks were installed, 23 curb ramps were installed, ADA compliant, 1 new sidewalk segment, 6 bulb outs that have been constructed to narrow the vehicle lanes, slow traffic, and reduce the exposure of pedestrians to moving vehicles, 2 bicycle lane projects, 7 speed humps, 4 permanent speed radar signs that alert drivers when they're exceeding the speed limit, and signal timing adjustments at 2 intersections to give pedestrians a head start before the corresponding vehicles are given their green time as well. And 2 projects where the travel lanes have been reduced in width through the use of striping. So the next series of slides will show off some of the major projects that were completed around each of our schools, starting with Acalanes High School. So the maps are intended to show the approximate locations where each of the improvements have been constructed. You can see that for Acalanes High School, the majority of work was completed along Stanley Boulevard, with some of the projects on Pleasant Hill Road. On Stanley, this is the location of the new sidewalk on the south side, closer to Camino Diablo, leading to a new rapid flashing beacon crossing. This summer, we installed a new raised crosswalk between the 2 school driveways with a new flashing beacon crossing. And anecdotally, this improvement has resulted in more students crossing here where we want them to cross, rather than their past practice of kind of fanning out to and from the school in a much more random pattern. So this has been a great improvement. On Stanley, we installed 2 speed humps and narrowed the travel lanes, as you can see on the right. And we formalized the intersection at Stanley at Camino Diablo through the installation of 2 crosswalks with 3 curb ramps. Moving on to Pleasant Hill Road, at the really busy Stanley Deer Hill Pleasant Hill Road intersection, we installed high visibility school crosswalks and installed 4 speed radar signs along that corridor. Moving up the street to Spring Hill Elementary, the majority of work was completed on Spring Hill as well as in the slip lane between Spring Hill and southbound Pleasant Hill Road. With the new raised crosswalk and bulb outs in that slip lane. Looks really nice. Here it is in action. As well as pedestrians that are crossing Pleasant Hill Road now have a 5-second head start before the cars get their green. And so that's a huge comfort improvement for pedestrians. Lafayette Elementary and Stanley Middle School, we were very busy on School Street and St. Mary's Road in particular. On School Street, this is at Paradise Court opposite the school entrance. This was a huge improvement. It seems small, but it was actually a pretty major technical exercise for Mike. We realigned the crosswalks, installed new curb ramps, bulb outs, and flash and beacon crossings there. We installed the temporary bike lane on the north side of School Street, installed 2 speed humps. And on St. Mary's Road, at the Acampo Drive and Solano Drive intersections, we installed new flashing beacon crossings at each of those intersections. This is a photo of Solano Drive. We actually realigned the crosswalk on the other side of Solano Drive, installed new curb ramps, and this photo was taken just before the flashing beacon crossing was installed. At Happy Valley Elementary, not surprising, the improvements were all constructed along Happy Valley Road, including, again, flashing beacon crossings with bulb out and curb ramps, as well as 2 speed humps kind of coming into the school zone from either side. And finally, at the Marist School, a lot of corridor-wide work along Condit Road and Leland Drive, including refreshing all the lane markings. They look great out there now, and a speed hump on Leland Drive. Of course, this project has been supplemented by other citywide initiatives that have been executed in parallel with this project to also improve safety around school. That includes the recent effort to establish reduced school zone speed limits around all of these schools. We initiated the Slow Down Lafayette campaign led by the Lafayette Police Department to reduce vehicular speeds and contribute towards a culture of slower driving throughout the city. And finally, we completed in 2023 the Burton Valley Elementary Traffic Calming Pilot Program, a project that resulted in a series of improvements throughout that neighborhood, including a number of speed humps, roadway striping, and signage improvements. And so with that, we are really excited to have completed all this work, and it was a huge team effort, and there are many people to thank. I'm going to hand it over to my colleagues here to do that, including the City Council for prioritizing this work and allocating the funding to make it happen.
Well, I'll begin by, reiterating that this is huge. This is really big. If you look at the breadth of improvements that have been made for all our schools throughout the city, and the difference that's going to make for safety, especially for pedestrians and cyclists, this is big. And I just wish there were more people here to witness this recognition. And my hope is that local media will pick up on this. The Lawman Weekly hopefully is watching online or whatever. But this is really big. I just want to make 2 quick comments. One is, these improvements were based on the rapid implementation plans. And I just want to stress that there was really, the actual the planning and construction did happen fairly quickly in a 2-year time frame. When we consider the number of projects involved being completed in 2 years, that's very impressive. But the whole process in developing the plans and getting input from the public was very thoughtful. And it started with the school visits, which where parents and neighbors and school staff participated in that, supported by obviously city staff and the consultant supporting this effort. It began with that. It went into developing the various projects and prioritizing those, and coming back to the Transcirc, where we sort of fine-tuned things, and then went into the final planning, and then the actual construction itself managed by city staff. So there was nothing it sounds nice, but this was a very thoughtful effort. And finally, I really want to give credit where credit is due, and that is to city staff, to Patrick, to Mike, to Matt, and others, and maybe Stella will get into some more names, but these city staff, engineering staff maintained focus. They were very thoughtful in how this was managed. My understanding was it pretty much kept within budget, and a lot of great things were done. So anyway, I'm really proud of this, and I'm happy for the city, and I'm happy for the kids and the parents that can really benefit from these changes. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stella.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Patrick, for the presentation, Bart, for your comments, and they're all something I all agree with. I definitely agree with. I just wanted to take a few minutes to just shout out for some of the individuals who were part of this process from the very beginning. And so first, extending deep appreciation to Councilmember Candell, who advocated for improving safety around the schools as one of the 2021 council priorities. We took up the charge at that point when Mike came to Transcirc and said, hey, here's a thing, take a look at this. And in doing so, we really all got involved. We all just rolled our sleeves up and got involved. And so I wanted to recognize the school's leadership, city volunteers, and community members who came together to identify needs and solutions. Transcirc Commissioner Carl DeGiorgio worked at Burton Valley with Principal Dolly. Commissioners Lynn Hedane and Vianney Serrier focused on Stanley Middle School and Lafayette Elementary with Principals Kim and Balmont. Gail Taylor was a former commissioner at that point, but she had a child at Happy Valley, and so she worked with Principal Pave on finding out what some of their needs were, and also with some of the parent faculty club members. Greg Brown, Commissioner Greg Brown, and Jen Paul, community member, and I worked on Spring Hill Elementary and Acalanes with Principals Thalug and Sean, as well as Superintendents Whitmore and Nickerson. They were out on the streets with us many times as well, looking at the conditions. The PTAs and the PFCs from the elementary and the middle schools were all heavily involved, as was the Acalanes Parents Club. And numerous parents and community members who all came to forums and walkabouts. I think you saw some photographs in the presentation of those that took place over several months, were all really important to the process and to developing the list of projects that ultimately you approved. And so definitely many, many, many thanks to, he's escaped. All right. I'll just have to yell really loudly. Many, many, many thanks to Mike Moran for his planning and execution of all of this. This was no small task. That you saw the list of projects in the staff report. A lot of time, a lot of attention, a lot of care, and of course, the last thing, a lot of money. So thank you all on council for prioritizing this project, for stepping up and meeting the need that was in the safety implementation or the rapid implementation plans, and for granting the funding for this really comprehensive set of projects from the Palos Colorados settlement. Your action has absolutely improved the lives of all of our city's youngest residents and their families, and really I think it's a very important action and legacy. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And I just want to say, when I read the staff report, I loved it was the acknowledgement and celebration of this work, because it truly is something to celebrate from, everyone involved, the community, and it wasn't easy. There were some, but literally bumps in the road, but it was really good. And I want to open it up to comments from council.
I am so proud of you guys. Honestly, staff, the shout out goes to staff, because they were the glue that kept together, and like Bart said, kept the focus on it and kept it going and kept it fresh and not stopping. And honestly, how many wins do we get like this as a city? I mean, it's just not very often. And I want to, the historical magnitude of this and how important it really is for our city cannot be understated. This is when I feel when a local government is at its very best. They take a real desire by the community for some real action back there. It was very emotional after what kind of made this all come off in some accidents and some untimely deaths. And we took that emotion and took it to heart and listened and responded in such a nice, focused, fast way. It is so unusual after watching the city for many, many years to be able to pull this off. And again, the staff, city manager for not losing the faith either. So thank you. I think we should make a book. Honestly, I may just send this out to Shutterfly and make a little book, and we'll just put it on, the entry table outside the city office and see people go, oh, this is so cool. Anyways, I just am so proud. of everybody. Thank you.
Any other comments? Please, Vice Mayor Clark.
Yeah, very impressive, and driving around the city, it's so noticeable and such a uplift to go see how quickly this was done in the summer. So much work was done, and the pictures do it justice, just to, when you count up and see the totality of the improvements that we were able to do in our city. It's very tangible to us. At the same time, I would say through reading the report, I remember Ashley Diaz, who was very, very committed to student safety, and I, in his memory, think, as I reviewed and see the work here, that I think about him. So thank you for excellent report.
Yes, thank you again. Councilmember Andre?
Yep. Well, this report is just fantastic because it brings everything together. People may see the improvements around their school, but they would not realize the magnitude of this effort. And really, I second what you said, Bart, about city staff. I mean, it's just an amazing project. Thanks to Councilmember Kendall for being involved in spurring this. Well, you were the liaison and took the lead for the council, so thank you. But you really should put this in book form and at least set it out, and because just seeing all this together is just incredible. So, thank you. Carl DeGiorgio is now off Trans-Circ, but thanks to him, thanks to you for keeping the focus on this and making this happen. This really, it is a big thing, so thank you.
Just real briefly, since I was not part of this thing, I can only step back in awe of what happened, because it's so easy to get frustrated with, with the pace of things, and it's just amazing what was done in such a short amount of time. I mean, 2021 was not that long ago. So I have to be, just as a community member observing what happened, I'm just very impressed and very grateful to all of you. Thank you.
Yeah, so all of the above. And definitely when I think back, when I started my term was in 2021, and this has been a council priority since then. And just recently, because we felt like, okay, we have this in hand, we can, move on to our other priorities, that we're working on in parallel. But it's a huge thing to say that, because now it becomes just part of the foundation that we move forward with. So it is a big deal. It's a huge deal, as you said, Bart. So many thanks to the staff. I know, the funding there, and Mike, who isn't here, we even had CPAC meetings. We were looking at, okay, how do the expenditures, are we going to spread it around? What's the impact on this and that? Very thoughtful, very considered, and so much effort in engaging the community for each and every one of these projects, which is, an integral part of the success of these as well. So I want to thank you for the Trans-Circ Commission and for staff and all of our community for really pitching in on this. And this is the product. It is definitely something to be proud of as a city. And we'll look forward to this kind of level of work as we plan the corridor plan for Mount Diablo, the downtown corridor. So looking forward to that. But anyway, thank you very much.
I have no public comment on this item.
Ooh, Roger.
Roger Deming again. Again, though our numbers may be small, I'm hoping my voice can give rise to the mighty thanks. My family actually lives off of Quant. We saw firsthand the construction, the really rapid turnaround, so thank you for that. It definitely feels noticeably better to walk through the intersection there on Quant for us, but also just around. We saw the other roads going on. I did have two questions. I noticed you said early on that part of the process was evaluating perceived versus actual sort of dangers as you're going through with considering school safety and walking around. And I was wondering if you could give a little brief comment perhaps on sort of what were the differences, and kind of assuming that sort of guided what changes you ultimately chose to go with over some that might be thought of as a perceived threat that was not. And then a drop of cold water to pour on. As someone who, again, lives near Acalanes and walks along Pleasant Hill Road all the time, if I'm walking there between the hours of, let's say, 3 o'clock in the afternoon until about 6, or driving through and can see those speedo signs warning drivers of fast traffic, I would say, though the speed limit may be 25, I would say the average traffic is considerably faster. So my little drop of cold water is there any thoughts going forward towards enforcements, how to actually ensure adhesion to the new safety measures that are in place? Speed bumps are kind of self-reinforcing, but I was wondering on some of the other matters. So, thank you.
Thank you. Would you take that question, Patrick?
Yeah, the first question about actual versus perceived. Actual, what I meant was collisions had happened there. And perceived was more, I don't feel safe with my kid crossing here because whatever that issue might be. So just reported locations where safety was a concern by parents. And I don't know if you want to supplement because you were part of those walking tours, if you want to add anything to that. But that is what my intent was between actual versus perceived safety issues. Okay, and in terms of the, I think the question was about Pleasant Hill Road and the 25-mile-an-hour speed zones or speed limits within those school zones. So this effort was initiated just this past summer. The state gives jurisdictions very prescriptive guidance of the speed limits that streets are eligible to be in within 500 feet of a school. So on a street like Pleasant Hill Road with those characteristics, 25 is the minimum speed limit that we could set for that road. Per state guidance as well, that is when children are present. So what that implies is school pickup and drop-off periods as well as lunch periods. So the speed limit outside of those time periods are 35 on that segment of Pleasant Hill Road. And from what I understand, the police department has been enforcing the speeds along Pleasant Hill Road. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Are there any more public comments?
No additional comments.
Okay. Well, thank you again, and thanks for being here this evening. Thanks, Patrick, for the presentation and the great pictures. We'll move to item number 10, the consent calendar. Is there any council member who would like to make any changes to the consent calendar or otherwise move to adopt? And I will also ask for public if there is any one who would like to make changes or pull anything off the consent calendar.
Mayor, I have no request to pull an item from the consent calendar.
Thank you.
I move we adopt the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
All right, thanks. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye, unanimous. We have adopted the consent calendar. And as there is no old business or new staff reports, we will go directly to agenda item number 15, council and commission reports. Are there any council members who would like to report an activity? Councilmember Dury?
Well, I'll just mention that a community tradition occurred here last Wednesday when the Lafayette Homeowners Council hosted the Candidates Night. The room was full. They were lined up along the walls. They very generously gave me my same seat at the table for that night. I thought it was a great democratic exercise, small d democratic exercise. So thank you to the Lafayette Homeowners Council.
So two things, but I'll start off as a person in the audience. You guys did such a good job, honestly. You guys, my fellow council members, were very well represented that night. It's proud to be part of a council and share with you guys. I just want to make sure that you know you guys kind of nailed it. And then the second thing is that we had a Lombardi School Bus Transportation Agency meeting. And it's big because we had two big items. We are in the process of the RFPs. We've got some in and we'll be reviewing them coming up soon. That'll carry us into the next, I think, 5 years. And we know there's going to be a cost increase. We know that. So the flip side of that is that progress was made with this, at least the city of Lafayette and the school district, Lafayette School District, in signing the MOU that is necessary to get the state funding to come through the school districts and back into our JPA. So Lafayette has done it this year. Now we have a model MOU where the work is now to this next year is to get an MOU signed with Orinda and Moraga as well. We're going to try to go for one MOU that's the same for all of the cities. We can all sign it. And so going ahead, we will be able to take that money, and that money will do a great deal of good to offset the increased prices of our new RFP, knowing that it's going to go up. And so cross your fingers, we won't have to reduce services. Cross your fingers, we won't have to increase the costs too much for our residents. A couple of years ago, we had that big shock, right? We had a huge shock of a price increase. We hope we can avoid that. It looks very promising.
Thank you for that, and thanks for your work on that authority, and to Whitney, who works on that program on staff, so.
Whitney has been a rock star through all this.
Thank you. Anyone else? Vice Mayor Kwok?
Yes, I have the pleasure this morning of representing the City Council as the guest speaker at Lafayette Elementary School, 4th and 5th graders, 180 students at their assembly. We were talking about civics and local government, and the question of what does a City Council do? What does a vice mayor do? What does a mayor do? They had excellent questions, unending questions and enthusiasm, including, how do traffic signals work? Who does the timing on those? And that was actually a good opportunity to talk about the new Smart Signals program, which are smart signals. We talked about bike paths, and many people raised their hands, and students said they love to have a bike path to ride to school. They stumped me with the question including, how old do you have to be a city council member? And does anybody here know the question? Thank you, Clerk Robbins, because, and thankfully one of the teachers used his phone to tell me the answer later on, that it was in fact 18 years old. But the president of the student body and the vice president were in the room, and the president raised his hand and he asked, what does it take to be a great mayor? What are the skills that one should have? And at the very end, a young lady came up to me and said she was very shy, and she was a little concerned that she might not be able to make a good city council member if she was very shy. But I reassured her that I was shy at her age, and that if she wanted to overcome that she could. So I hope maybe she'll change her mind. I asked how many people in the room wanted to be a mayor, and about 4 people raised their hands. So I was encouraged by that, and I encourage them all to think about a future in public service. Overall, we closed the session with students lining up for my autograph. I was very, very flattered to sign Post-it notes to wrinkled pieces of paper, and I highly encourage my fellow council members to enjoy this privilege in the future that I will not be able to enjoy in the near future. But they did have RBK as their speaker 2 years ago, and they had Councilmember Geringer also as a speaker. And they said due to the COVID pandemic, they sort of had this pause in civic engagement with city council members, but I volunteered on your behalf that we would like to engage with the students in our community, and we welcome this opportunity, and it's our obligation and our honor to come to the classroom and speak to students. And so I encourage the faculty at Lafayette Elementary School to reach out to our city manager, our council, and that we are open to that in the future. And I think highly recommend is a wonderful experience for both students and ourselves. So that was a great pleasure this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. It sounds like you represented us well, so appreciate it and that report. That's uplifting. I have a little show and tell. This was dropped off on dais here. This is actually the proclamation for the county supervisors proclaimed October as Filipino Heritage Month, as similar to what we did in Lafayette. I had the pleasure of being at that meeting, and a high schooler in Danville actually worked with the council there and said he was really determined to get a proclamation passed in the county, and he would have Attorney General Rob Bonta there because he's a Filipino heritage. And lo and behold, he worked, diligently, months and months, and AG Bonta was there and gave a lovely kind of background and a little history on Filipino Heritage Month. So it was really a neat event to be at, especially, meaningful to me because I am also, of course, of Filipino heritage, and Mayor this year just has a special, resounding significance to me. But yes. Are there any other updates? Okay. Then with that, we will move to adjournment, I believe. B, where's B? Oh, yes, something very important, actually. Councilmember Andori, will you please take this? Thank you.
Mayor Dawson, Vice Chair Radanich of the Planning Commission, and I interviewed 3 candidates last week or week before last, and all 3 of the candidates were exceptional. So it was a hard choice for us to make, but we are recommending tonight Carl DiGiorgio and Dan Emerson to be appointed to the Planning Commission. The 3rd candidate was Roger Deming, who I think has shown by his patience tonight that he has what it takes to serve on a commission. And we learned from our interview that we really do want you to become active in the city, and we all will work with you to find an appropriate place. And I think you also showed by your questions that you would be a great part of our city commission. So I will move, unless you want to say something now.
No, thank you. You queued that up very well. And just want to say Transcirc, who had that fabulous presentation, is looking for another commissioner. So that is something that we would be glad to recommend you for interviewing with that. All right. Were there any questions? Are there any public comments?
There are no public comments on this item.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll move adoption of Resolution 2024-37, appointing Carl DiGiorgio and Dan Emerson to terms on the Lafayette Planning Commission expiring June 30th, 2026.
A second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
An aye, that is unanimous. We have 2 new planning commissioners. And thank them both, and thank you for coming out as well, Roger, for interviewing. All right, with that, we will then now move to adjournment, and I'd like to adjourn, as we brought up his name earlier, in memory of Ashley Diaz. He was a school crossing guard, and we appreciate his service, and we are mindful of his presence and his spirit of community safety. So with that, we will close. Thank you.
Thank you.